I want to be in Deuteronomy 24 tonight, and I want to give you some lessons from that. And socialism is, the difference. We believe in giving and helping the poor. It's just a matter of one is voluntary and one isn't. One you can discern, when you can't as much, and the need of people and things. And it was a Bible message, not a political message. And socialism works for, when it starts, it always works for a little while, and then you start running out of money from other people, and people start losing their motivations. And I think socialism, if you look at the record of it, if you count the Norwegian states, the Nordic states, and the Denmark and Holland, and then Sweden and all those, if you count those as successes, they won't be eventually, but just count them for a success. Socialism is basically something like, 4 and 210 as a record. And that would not be a good record for a team. Socialism usually fails. But I want to talk to you about a solution in God's way, because the church certainly helped people, and it is good to help people, and God has a way to do that. But I'm going to call the lesson tonight, because it's not really about socialism tonight. It's more about helping people and some principles of helping people that's very practical. It's called Lessons from Gleanings. Lessons from Gleanings. Deuteronomy 24. I'm going to start at verse 14 and go down to verse 22. It says, "Thou shalt not impress an hired servant that is poor and needy, whether he be of thy brethren or of the strangers that are in thy land within thy gates. And this day thou shalt give him and his day thou shalt give him for his hire, neither shall the sun go down upon it. For he is poor, and setteth his heart upon it, lest he cry against thee to the Lord, and it be sin unto thee. The fathers shall not be put to death, nor the children, neither shall the children be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin. Thou shalt not pervert the judgment of the stranger, nor the fatherless, nor take the widow's raiment to pledge. But thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in Egypt, and the Lord thy God redeemed thee thence. Therefore I command thee to do this thing. When thou cuttest down thy harvest in thy field, and hast forgot the sheaf in the field, thou shalt not go again to fetch it, and it shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, for the widow, and that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thine hands. When thou hast beaten thine olive tree, thou shalt not go over the boughs again. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and the widow. When thou gatherest grapes in thy vineyard, thou shalt not glean it afterwards. It shall be for the stranger, and for the fatherless, and the widow. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in the land of Egypt. Therefore I command thee to do this thing." All right, let's go ahead and pray and ask the Lord to help us tonight. Father, we are grateful for your word and the guidance it gives us. Lord, I think there's a lot of things that probably isn't in the typical Christian's Bible thinking, but these principles are certainly here and should be just a way of thinking. And Lord, I thank you we can see these things, and I think you show us these principles throughout your word. And I pray we'd get them and understand how wonderful the word of God is, and how it has the answers to problems, and guide us now and speak to us. We pray for your help, for your spirit to move in this lesson. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Give some things here. First of all, just some principles, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on those. But first of all, it says, don't oppress people just because you can. Okay? There is Deuteronomy 24. And I want to say that there is kind of the far opposite of socialism is way over here, where it's a rugged individualism to the level of, hey, if I can take advantage of somebody, that's their weakness, that's their problem, that's their fault. That's not biblical either, okay? Neither one of those are good. And it says, hey, just because you can get away with ripping them off, just because they have no defense, just because you can outwit them or you have the leverage on them, just because of that, doesn't mean you should do it. You shouldn't do it. And might doesn't make right, okay? And you see this, it talks about this in verses 14 and 15. First of all, thou shalt not oppress an hired servant that is poor and needy, whether he be of thy brethren or of thy strangers that are in thy land within thy gates. At his day thou shalt give him his hire, neither shall the sun go down upon it, for he is poor, and setteth his heart upon it. So say, he needs the money right now. Don't just pay him the same day. And he needs it right now. He's poor. That's probably his food for the day. And so do that. Or he's going to turn you into God, and God will deal with you, it says. And The end of verse 15, lest he cry against thee to the Lord, and it be sin unto thee. Verse 17, thou shalt not pervert the just judgment of the sinner, nor the fatherless, nor take a widow's raiment to pledge, but thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in Egypt. And so he says, hey, don't take advantage of people. Don't take advantage of people. That's an important principle there. Just because this person is desperate and you can pay them $3 an hour doesn't mean you should, when the job is worth $10 an hour. You say, but they'll take it. There's an ethics thing there. It's not just what they'll take, it's what they should receive. And that's also a principle there. Okay? And that's just the first thing it says. Secondly, is everyone bears their own burden. Verse 16, the father shall not be put to death for the children, neither shall the children be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin. And everybody bears their own burden. And if that's not injustice, and there's been many times when a country was unjust, and during a revolution, the French Revolution, because the parents were rich, they killed the kids and the parents. And of course, it's an injustice when children suffer for the sins of their parents. That's why we will feed children when the parents are irresponsible, when we might not feed the parents. But it's not the kids' fault that the parents are responsible. And so everybody bears their own burden. Everybody gets for their own responsibility. If the children are bad, the children are bad. The parents shouldn't suffer the children, and all these things. Everybody bears their own burden. And then I want to get to gleanings now, is really what I want to focus on here. Gleanings. Now, what gleanings are? Gleanings are the leftovers. Okay? So understand you have three parts of the harvest in the Bible. You have the first fruits, you have the main harvest, you have the gleanings. The first fruits is the first samples. It's basically the first fruits that pop off the tree. If you're selling all your fruit, you take that to the buyer and say, these are what the fruit's going to look like. They taste them, they look at the size, and they judge them, and that's the first fruits. And that's kind of the sample. And that's what comes out, the ones that pop in early. The main harvest is what you eat, what you sell, or whatever the case is in a particular person's situation there. It's what you kind of get, everything kind of ripens at once, right? And you all go get it all, and that's the main harvest. And then afterward, some things come in late. Okay? Those are gleanings. But that is not all of gleanings. There's other gleanings in the Bible. Gleanings are also things, God gives real specific instructions of how to cut your field and to leave some over. That sometimes certain kind of bushes, you whack them and knock things off in the harvest. And it says, okay, whatever comes off is fine. The rest is gleanings. Okay? So whatever the case is, whether it's they come in late, whether it's on a corner of the field, and we'll get to that in a minute, whether it's when you took them off, these ones didn't come off, and they're left over. Those are called gleanings. That's the leftover fruit, and they have that. And so the gleanings are supposed to be left. Okay? You're supposed to leave those gleanings for the poor people, for the widows, for the fatherless, for people who are poor, and they go out and get those after you. And let me show you, and there's some good principles in here that I think are fascinating. Proverbs 24, and let's look at verse 19. And there's other verses in 23, and we'll also wander around the Bible a little bit, but let's read verses 19. When thou cuttest down thine harvest in the field, and hast forgot a sheaf in the field. Okay? So you take your corn or whatever you're harvesting, and you tie it into bundles, okay? And you go out and you take it all out, and all of a sudden you get back to your house and you're looking over your all chopped down field, and there you see a sheaf in the field. You let the bundle of crop, it says don't go back. Leave that sheaf you forgot for the poor people. Thou shalt not go again and fetch it, verse 19. It shall be for the stranger and for the fatherless, for the widow, that the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all the work of thine hands. When thou beatest thine olive tree, so you're whacking it and the olives are falling off, thou shalt not go over the boughs again. What's left over that didn't come off when you beat it, when you whacked the tree, shall be for the stranger and for the fatherless and the widows. When thou gatherest thy grapes, thy vineyard, thou shalt not glean it afterwards. So now you're picking grapes, so you've left a sheaf in the field, leave it. You beat your olives, and some stayed in the tree, just leave them. Don't go back and get more. You've picked your grapes, and some weren't ready. Leave them. Those will be for the poor people, and they'll go get those things. Now, there's one other thing. We'll read it in a different verse, but it says, when you cut your field, leave the corners. Kind of just go around the corners and just see the four corners and let that be for the gleaning of the poor people. Just leave the corners for them and kind of do it around and leave the corners, the four corners of the field, and leave those, and don't be too picky, and don't get every last thing in the corner. Just leave that on the edges of the poor people and let them go get it. They're probably widows. They may have kids. It's going to be harder for them. So it's right on the edge, and just make it easy for them. And it's easier for you to just go get everything else. And so those are the gleanings that you should have left over for the poor people. That is biblical socialism. Okay, let me give you why this is so good and give you some principles about this we can learn. First of all, it's best that needy people work, even for getting help. Okay? It is best that needy people, they're desperate, they're in trouble, they need, it's still good for them to work. Okay? You understand the gleanings, you're not bringing them the food. They're going to go get the food. You left it for them. You see what a good deal, the smart thing God has there? Let me show you just Proverbs 14:23, and keep your finger where you are. But I'm going to read a couple verses out of Proverbs right now. I'm just going to read one. We'll get to it later. Proverbs 14 and verse 23. In all labor there is profit, but the talk of the lips tendeth only to penury. You know, it's something I learned the backward way. I could have learned it from the Bible and then implemented it, but I implemented it from experience and then learned the Bible taught it, is we make people do something to help them. Okay? Sunday, we helped somebody. They were couldn't pay their mortgage, and we helped them. And I gave them some things to do. Okay? We had someone who came by for groceries. And I gave them some things to do. And why? Because it's good for them to work. Now, somebody who doesn't like that and thinks, that's so mean, you should just give people stuff. Hey, what about the people who can't work? Okay, I understand. No legs, get it. Blind and deaf, understandable. You know, blind people work a lot. Deaf people work a lot, okay? But somebody's blind, okay, I understand. Somebody has no arms, that's not the issue. That little 1%, okay? I'm talking about the person who could walk out in the field and pick an apple off a tree. You're pretty disabled if you can't pick an apple off a tree, if you can't pick up grapes off a branch, okay? And a whole bunch of people who are living off the government are not that disabled. By the way, you could have severe emotional problems and still go pick olives and grapes, right? You don't have to be on SSI if that was the situation. Do you see what a good plan is? Why? Because it's good for them. I used to, boy, when I was first pastor and knew so many people, and I've always tended towards needy people and people with troubles, and boy, just for so long, even before I was a pastor, and worked with those people. And I used to see people, and they'd say, "Oh, I'm bipolar, or I suffer from clinical depression, or whatever, the mental condition, or I have a bad back, or I have this." And the government would start paying them, and they'd give them housing, they'd give them food, they'd give them everything, and then I'd watch those people that I knew immediately deteriorate. They just deteriorated. Their health deteriorated, their mind deteriorated, their emotions deteriorated. They go from having a bad back, I can't work, to now, I'm depressed, I need medication, to now, I have a severely bad back. Look, can I tell you something? I went and lifted a 150-pound log this week. Okay, I got a pretty good back most of the time. If I lay around all day, whenever I am on my back and sitting around all day, I have back problems. When I start gaining weight, which I do when I'm not busy, I get back problems and knee problems and feet problems. Look, when you throw a 100-pound backpack on you or 100-pound front pack, that affects your whole body. And I watch these people deteriorate, get hopeless, not feel good about themselves. Look, you feel good when you work. Even if you think you hate your job is making you much happier than if you sat around doing nothing, watching TV and playing video games. In all labor, there is profit. There is profit. They would go out and pick their own crops. They were poor. They had no land. She's a widow, but there's her food. And she didn't just lay around and do nothing. She had something to do. And she could take her kids and show her kids how to work. Because in all labor, there's profit. And by the way, families should work together. It's healthy. They should work together. And so this is God's plan. And so it's a good thing because in all labor, there is profit. That's what the Bible says in 2 Thessalonians 3:10, if a man won't work, neither should he eat. And look, God says, hey, leave the gleanings. Leave the gleanings. Look, the man might be able to go and get a job working on the crops, but the widow and the orphan might not. Or this guy might have a really lame leg. Maybe he has one arm. Okay, leave the gleanings for him. He can go out and pick things with one arm. Okay? And I think it's cruel when someone has a good mind and a regular body and has one arm, or somebody has depression, or someone has a one leg, or someone is deaf, for you to say you can't work. I think that's cruel. I think it's looking down on them. I think it's terrible for them. I think it ruins what they could be. I think it's selling them short. I think when they do things, look, a guy with no legs climbed Mount Everest. Okay? And so I believe it's good for people to work. It keeps them out of trouble. It makes them feel accomplishment. It keeps them from being idle. Okay? It keeps their mind sound. It helps them figure things out. And all throughout the day, you learn how to overcome things. Can I just tell you, you don't have to have a super active job as long as you're moving. But stationary all day, every day, and sitting around the house, and it's terrible for you. Not getting outside in the sunshine is bad for you. All this stuff is bad for you. You need to be busy and working. And look, the people who are on these things, and we have in our church, and we love them, and we're their friends, I tell them, look, man, walk around the neighborhood and pick up the trash. Go to the park and pick up the needles from the drug addicts so the kids don't have to step on them. Do something. Go down to the mission and serve food to the homeless. But do something. Because in labor, there's profit. In labor, there's profit. And so number one, it is best the needy people work, even for getting help. Even when they're not getting paid for it, it's good for them to work. Number two, blessed people should not be greedy and tight-fisted. You have a harvest. Don't go back for every olive. Can't understand that. Do you know there's rich people who are very greedy? But they don't need to be. I mean, they have plenty. And they're the Scrooges. And we laugh at the Scrooge, but you know there's really Scrooges out there. I mean, they have plenty, and they will squeeze the poor person for the last penny. They won't share anything. They got $50,000 in the bank, and they could ease up on somebody for $50. No way. And that's unbiblical and ungodly. Now, let me take you to the book of Ruth. We're going to be back here in Deuteronomy. Let me take you to the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth is about this. Actually, it's how the whole story starts. Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth. It's not too far ahead from where you are. Ruth. Chapter 2. You shouldn't be greedy and tight-fisted. You know what? Keep your finger in Ruth. Let me take it to Proverbs first. We'll go to Ruth for the next couple points. But and now you got your finger in 3 spots. We'll be back in Deuteronomy. Let me take it to Proverbs 11. Don't be greedy. Don't watch every single penny. You know what? I think now understand. I understand wise living. I understand budgeting. I think is good. I think handling your money wisely is good. I think planning is good. I think all that's good. I think there is a greediness, a miserness that's not healthy. It's not healthy. Okay? Do you understand the difference between frugal and cheapskate? Yeah. You understand the difference? There's a difference there. Okay? And so we don't want to have that. And Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 24. There is that scattereth and yet increaseth. There is that withholdeth more than is meet, No, not withholdeth, but withholdeth more than his meat. You're holding back more than you need to. But attendeth to poverty. The liberal soul shall be made fat, and he that watereth shall be watered also himself. I remember when I was a new Christian. Boy, I was a new Christian. And we were in California. We were at a Denny's. I'll never forget, you could just, the store was, the Denny's was crammed. Every table, people in line waiting to get the seats and everything. And there was, I think, just 2 waitresses in the whole place. And like 2 waitresses called off. And this lady was literally jogging, running around everywhere. And we were waiting for our food. We probably waited an hour for our food. I mean, she didn't come to get our order and she was moving, but she didn't get our order for 30 minutes. And then we didn't get our food back for another 30 minutes. And I was a typical teenager. What was I thinking of? Food. And I was kind of grumpy. And all of a sudden, she comes out, I mean, trying to bring way too many dishes. And she drops the whole thing and shatters on the ground. And she just started crying. And she just started bawling. And all these good Christians, they were good Christians with me, wise men of God. They felt terrible for her and all this stuff. And I thought, man, I hope that's not my food. And all this stuff. And, you know, and this was 1986, I'm going to say. You know, we eventually got our food. We eventually ate. You know, they left her a tip equal to our bill. I think our bill was $60. We had a group at the table. They had their $60 tip. Now, as a teenager, I'm going, let's see, 60, 15%, wait. And they told me, hey, she's having a hard night, you know? And I thought, and it was a good lesson for me to see that. And that was good of them to do that, wasn't it? And yes, you could say, well, the law says and the rule is, I know it is, but you know. And so don't be that way. You withhold more than his meat. Look, the guy's got a crop. You got all these olive trees. You got a whole vineyard of grapes. Look, let the poor people come. Don't go back again because you got 4 grapes per bush. Just per vine. It's vine, right? Yeah, grapevine. And them grape trees. And and so, because you got 4 grapes for vine and I could still get more. And yes, you could, but you got some poor people out there and you got to look at your barns are full. There's a level to say enough. You're okay. You're good. You're good. It's okay. And that's the right attitude. And you have that. Blessed people should not be greedy and tight-fisted. You get in plenty. Don't withhold more than meat. Next, poor people should not take advantage of rich people. Let me take it to Ruth now. What do you mean by that? I think there's an attitude that's growing in America, and it's a dangerous thing also. I think rich people should be good to poor people. I think poor people should be good to rich people. How many of you have worked for a poor boss? Raise your hand. Nobody. Okay. You know why that is? Because rich people are paying your bills. And you don't need to be mean to them. Okay? Because someone's extra diligent, someone works hard, someone has more than you, doesn't mean you need to be petty and tear them down. The problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. Okay? And so, just because, and here's the mentality that's coming to America, that it's sad and wrong and immoral and bad. Well, those rich people, what do they ever do to get all that? There's nothing wrong with me taking their stuff. Yes, there is. It's not your stuff. And you shouldn't covet it, and you shouldn't be greedy, and you shouldn't hate them and despise them because they have money. That's coveting. It's petty. You know what? If you're jealous, go earn it. Okay? But don't despise somebody because they have more than you. It's small. In this situation, this is Ruth and Boaz, and Ruth comes back with Naomi, and they are poor widows, and they go, and they're going to go to a field. Ruth is, and going to start going and getting the gleanings. And I just want you to notice verse 7. It says, "And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came, and she continued even from the morning until now, and she tarried a little at the house." I just want to say, this whole passage in chapter 2 here, you see her asking permission. You see her respectful. You see her thankful when he says yes and gives her things. You are not entitled. Do not criticize anybody who doesn't give you anything. Keyword, give. Okay? I had someone come to me one time, and it was bad weather, and they came to me, and I knew I should have done it. I told them I shouldn't do this, but it was really bad weather, and they wanted to sleep in the shuttle. They wanted to sleep in the church. I said no, and they said, "Can we sleep in the shuttle out there?" I said, "I don't want people to sleep in the shuttle." I said, "Really, we're desperate." Da da da. I said, "Look, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to say yes tonight, and you're going to sleep in the shuttle, and I'll be very glad. And you're going to say tomorrow, can I sleep in it again? I'm going to say no." Because once I let you do it, other people are going to let you see you sleeping in it. We're going to have people coming in and breaking into it. And I don't want people sleeping in the shuttle all the time. And it's not healthy, and it's not good, and it's not safe, and it's dangerous for the church and liability and everything else. And people go to the bathroom on our vehicles, and they've slept in them and broken in before, and all kinds of things. And so I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do this, but you're going to be mad at me too when I say no tomorrow. Oh, I'd never do that. Let them sleep in it that night. Next day, we really need to sleep in it again. I said, I can't. They said, this isn't fair. I said, I told you we're going to do that. And they said, well, if you would let us stay on it, we wouldn't be mad. I said, well, we can't. I'm sorry. And I said, just so you know, I never help somebody when they're mad at me for not helping them. And they said, well, somebody might vandalize your vehicle. I said, they might. And if we have the camera pointed at them, we'll turn them into police. But no. Why? They weren't entitled to the second night. They were not entitled to the first night. They were given a gift. Okay? And so you understand that nobody owes you anything. The government doesn't owe you money. If the government turns you down, okay? If you ask your mom for help when you're a grown up and they don't give you money, you know what you say? Okay, thanks for thinking about it. Not, I'm never going to talk to you again. You're not entitled. It's a gift. You're not entitled to your neighbor, your grandpa, but they have the money. Doesn't mean that you have any right to it. Doesn't mean you have one right to it. Nothing. That's where you learn to say thank you if somebody does something, and nobody owes you anything. And so Ruth says, can I please go glean out here? Understand, they asked, and she was thankful. And then he said, you can go out and do this other stuff in verse 9. And she says, verse 10, she fell on her face and bowed herself to the ground and said to him, why have I found grace in your eyes? Look, you're not justified in doing crime to rich people because you're poor. You're doing a crime. It's wrong. Okay? Well, they inherited, they didn't work for it. Neither did you, so it's not yours to destroy. It's not yours to despise them. Okay? Somebody asks something nice, be happy for them. Don't criticize them. The poor should be good to the rich. The rich should be good to the poor. Everybody should be kind to each other. Don't take advantage of the rich. Don't steal from them. Be courteous. Let's look at Deuteronomy. Back to Deuteronomy 23. Again, you can read over a lot of these things. Deuteronomy 23. So in the Bible, God gives these things. And it says, look, if your neighbor is in your field, God says, this is interesting. He says they can take some of your food and eat it. That's okay. Okay? Let me show you the conditions. Verse 24. When thou comest thy neighbor's vineyard, then thou mayest eat grapes thy fill at thine own pleasure. But thou shalt not put any in a vessel. When thou comest to the standing corn of thy neighbor, then thou mayest pluck the ears with thine hand, but thou shalt not move the sickle into thy neighbor's standing corn. You see what you can do there? Okay, you're walking with your neighbor, and by the way, we're used to, 1/5 of an acre, postal stamps, but in normal big lands, you're going to cross your neighbor's thing, you're hungry, and you're walking through the vineyard. It's just fine. Take some grapes and eat them. That's okay. And your neighbor can do that to you. It's all your neighbor. Just be courteous. You can go and take some corn from their thing and eat the corn while you're walking along, and you can go, try their corn. It's fine. But don't put it into a vessel. See what they're doing there? It's okay. It's okay. You can eat a few grapes there. That's fine. But don't say, oh, really? Okay. No, don't do that. Don't take a sickle to their crop. Don't start cutting down their crops. But if you need something, take it. It's fine. You can take it and they can take yours. So you see the courtesy there? Where when someone is good to you, don't take advantage of them. Does that make sense? See these principles here that God gives us? If someone does something for you, appreciate it and do something good for them. And make sure that you're a blessing. If someone loans you something, you take care of what they loan you. There's just a way to live where you don't take advantage of somebody, where you're appreciative. You're not going to take all their crops, and you have that mindset that it's courteous, and there's enough for your neighbor to go get some bites. So one person, okay, he's eating my grapes, but he's just snacking on them. That's fine. But I can snack on his grapes. I'm not going to load up my coat with them, pockets and stuff. I'm not going to do that. Why? Because I'm just taking a few bites while I'm walking through. You see courtesy in there on both sides? Okay, that's the Bible principle. Now, we said that it is best that needy people work. We said blessed people should not be greedy. We said poor people should not take advantage of the rich. And in that is being courteous both ways. Next, don't look down on the needy. Let's go back to Ruth. Should have kept you there. Don't look down on the needy. Because you have to help somebody does not mean you're superior to them. And you should look down on them. I've seen this where people who are capable and competent and diligent, and they grew up well, they were trained right, and they made something of themselves, and they have. When they meet someone who hasn't, they despise them and look down on them because they need help. Look, they might have, made some bad choices. They might have been brought up wrong. They might not have been brought up with parents. They might have, had a million different circumstances. She might have had kids out of marriage because she got raped. You don't know. Okay? Don't look down on poor people and needy people. They realize, but for the grace of God, you could have been born in that home. You could have been an addict too. You could have found the wrong person when you were 13 or 14 or 15 that got you addicted or got you pregnant or whatever. And so don't look down on people. Ruth chapter 2, watch when Boaz, a very wealthy man, comes along and sees these people gleaning in his fields. Verse 3, and she went and came and gleaned to the field after the reapers, and her hap that's where she just happened to light on the part of the field belonging to Boaz. That's no accident, by the way. Who was a kindred of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said unto the reapers, the Lord be with thee. And they answered him, the Lord bless thee. Then said Boaz, a servant, who was set over the reapers, whose damsel is this? And the servant was set over the reapers, answered and said, it is the Moabite's damsel. And she says, can I reap here? And he says, Boaz, verse 8, then Boaz said to Ruth, hearest not thou, my daughter? Go not to glean another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens. And let thine eyes be in the field that they do reap. He says, look, reap at this good spot. He doesn't even know he's a distant relative, but he treats her right. Who's this lady reaping here? She's Ruth. Oh, I've heard something about her. She's really been kind to her mother-in-law. And hey Ruth, go ahead and stay. Don't go to anybody else's field. I want you to go on mine and stay with my ladies. And then he says to his servants, hey, make sure nobody messes with her and keep the men away from her, and you have her treat her right. He didn't know the woman he was talking about and being kind to was his future wife, was in the genealogy of Christ, was a woman who would have a book of the Bible named after her. He didn't know any of that. He was just being kind to someone who was out in his field. And so don't look down on people. You don't know who you might be talking to. And he was good to all of them. Next, let's go back to Deuteronomy 24. Deuteronomy 24. And I want to say, last of all, givers are blessed. Givers are blessed. Deuteronomy 24 and verse 19. When thou cuttest down thine harvest in the field, and hast forgot a sheaf in the field, thou shalt not go again to fetch it. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, for the widow, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thine hands. He'll bless you in all the work of your hands. Let me take a Leviticus real quick and see if that's the verse I'm thinking of. Just want to finish up there. And verse 9, Leviticus 19, verse 9. And when ye reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not wholly reap the corners of thy field, neither shalt thou gather the gleanings of the harvest. Thou shalt not glean thy vineyard, neither shalt thou gather every grape of thy vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and stranger. I am the Lord thy God. So there it is. You just get the idea. That's a principle. So some good principles there, I think, from the scriptures we can learn. Amen? That's a good way to do it, God set up, isn't it? You know what the government would be good if they did? Just go pay some people to plant some crops and let the people who need food go pick them. Pretty cool. Things like that they could do. And that would be way, way, way too good of an idea for the government ever to do. And of course, they charge like $16 million an acre to do it. And but God's got a good way to do that. But you know what? Though the government, and I'm not worried about the government doing it, that's just principles for us in our lives. I understand we deal mostly in cash and other things like that. But these are principles of life, of way to deal with people and all these things. And I think we can help people with these principles and have them in our own minds, understand all these. They're good principles. And so that's kind of the corner we didn't get to last time.